So I said, my ear.
Recording in progress.
There you go. Slide it over. What's weird?
I gotta get that girl.
I'll put it up, I guess, when he.
So just have him so that he's used to looking at it and seeing himself.
Yep.
And what he can do is put that right in, set
Front
that
of it.
back and put it
Yep.
right in front of him. And
Okay.
I think that'll work. Hi, Owen.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, survived the storms.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad at my house. It just thunder and some rain.
Yeah, I'm glad I stayed at the office because we lost power at my house.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
See, there we are. There we go. Wow, my computer, this look like it's, on my screen, it looks like it's peach colored. It's red.
no, it does look peach.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
red. I mean, it's red. It's the Cornell Cooperative Extension shirt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow. Huh. It's odd. See if that works. Yeah. Good deal. So I printed out my presentation because when I do share screen, I can't really see it if I remember correctly. I'll try it, but I've got it printed out just in case. I've got my pad of paper here. I've got my presentation. I've got my phones. We're good to go.
So am I able, is everyone muted when they get on?
Yes,
And am I going to moderate the chat?
you can do that if you'd like.
Okay.
We can both do it. Shelby
Okay.
can do it. I mean, we can all
Okay.
do it. It's not a big deal. How come these are so straight looking? And I've got it set already for multiple people if anybody else wants to share a screen. So I've got it so that it works. It worked really well last time. We'll see, yeah, multiple participants. So
Yep.
we should be good. We've got 23 signed up.
That's good.
Okay. I don't know if all of them will show up, but we've got 23.
Okay.
And so that means that 23 at least we're interested in from whatever outreach we've done. So,
Yeah.
so that's all good. There's Matt. Hello, Matthew.
Hello.
Hello. You should be able to put your video
Yeah.
on.
I'm looking. It's here somewhere. Why?
Move your little arrow key. There
There
you
it is.
go. Yay. Look at you.
Was very. I feel very flustered from today. It was very hot.
Yes.
Very hot
It's gonna be
indeed.
worse tomorrow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's supposed to be 95 tomorrow.
Yeah. There's the future forecast does not look
And Friday 92.
very happy.
Yeah. Well, at least we got some rain, which helps alleviate some of that stress on the plants anyway.
It was.
So
Take it. We certainly have some nice rain this year.
yeah.
We'll
Oh
see.
my goodness.
A little
make it.
longer duration and less intensity would be good though, I imagine.
That would you know, a nice 85 would be
With sun and not haze.
yeah.
The sun is, I mean, it's, I don't know about you, my tomatoes are just like green as can be. I've got some that are starting to ripen.
Yeah. Oh, that they have everything seems slightly delayed this year, which is interesting. You know, they're not certainly
Yes.
not ripening as quickly as usual.
Well, even like sunflowers. I mean, my sunflowers in previous years were opened like August 1st, and here it is, they're still growing. They're, you know, it's,
I drove
and I
up,
planted them earlier.
It's been a unique season, that's for sure.
Yes, it has.
I drove to Vermont on Monday, and the farther north you got, the shorter the corn was. I mean, it was
Really?
amazing how much different it was.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's, I mean, corn actually was early here. It was. It's been doing really well early.
It's
So.
been very tasty as well, I will say.
Mhm.
The corn this year has been really good.
Matt Sabellico.
So we have Zoe here, and we have Bob here at the office. So and we have, what's your son's?
Otto.
Otto. So that's
He's
her,
asleep.
her little boy is asleep. So,
The star.
so
Mine just went to bed too, so I'm in the clear unless torrential downpour of crying begins.
Can you hear him? I can't.
I can turn it up for you.
I mean, we're not starting yet, are we?
no, we're just chatting.
Huh?
We're just chatting.
They're
Yeah.
just-
Yeah.
I have you on mute.
So it's really strange because I can hear on his iPad. When I
Oh.
so if you hear me hesitate, that's why. It's like
Yeah, Shelby's in her office across
on.
deliberately so we can do that.
the bathroom's
Yeah,
right there, right here. So yeah.
Dad, there's one right here.
Everyone forgets that one that's right around from that
I
room.
know. It's kind of nice. It's like the staff bathroom.
Take it
Oh,
when you
my
get it.
goodness. Oh, my goodness. So yes, I even have a presentation. Mine's gonna be closer to the 15 minutes, but that's all right. It won't be 15 minutes, but it's more than 10.
I did
More
not
than
get a-
10.
I didn't get a PowerPoint presentation completed, but
That's quite all right. Yeah, it mixes it up, and I think sometimes that's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
don't, I think that's just fine.
Shelby said something, and it's like, oh no, I need a PowerPoint. It's like, I've never done that before. I better.
No. we're
Now
good.
I want to make one just to prove to myself I can make a great PowerPoint presentation.
I'm sure you could. Once you figure out some of the very basics, it's really
Yeah.
easy.
Yep.
It really is very easy. So it's just, walking it through, go take a tutorial on it.
Yeah.
Really very simple. So,
Frankly, I think it's almost better to keep it simple.
yes.
Some of these presentations have gotten way too complicated and
Well, I took out all my motion, I hope. I went through it once. I was like, no, we don't need that. Whew, as it goes through. Yeah, no, we don't need that. We don't need that.
Gee
And
whiz
just remember,
sound
we are
effects.
just remember we are recording. As soon as I turned it on, it started recording. So, yeah, I went through and so Owen, you're probably gonna recognize some of the slides. I've recycled them some.
Hey, when you have the good content, you gotta keep using it.
You just recycle it and put it in, change the wording a little bit or whatever.
I've actually been deep in learning Excel, which is just exciting stuff. I've been deep
Well,
in
that's
deep in
so
spreadsheets
that-
recently.
back in the day, it was called Lotus 1, 2, 3.
No.
That's what I learned on. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
uh-huh. Back in the day, we didn't have Word, we had Word Perfect.
Yep.
And
do
here in the
remember that.
office, it was a huge deal that I used two different fonts in the same document. Everybody was like, oh my God, you can do that.
We had the
Sit there
second
and I'll play with
email
some.
in all of county government was at planning, and it was dc2@mhv.net. And I remember the specific office it was in. You used to turn it on, get the dee, 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 and you'd walk away, go get a
Yeah.
coffee, and come back 10 minutes later, and it'd still be beeping. And
Yeah.
Oh,
still
yeah.
trying to find the email.
Yep. Oh,
How
yeah, we
far
had the
we've
one.
come.
we had one computer in every program area that was logged into the quote unquote internet or whatever, dial up. Oh my goodness. Oh, those.
Oh, okay.
And now
Hey,
we're
Shelby.
always connected.
Hello.
And look at us now. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, what would the last year and a half been without it?
yeah. Oh, it wouldn't have, we couldn't have succeeded.
Yeah.
Nobody could have.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody really could have. So cell phones and everything else. So I even had one of those old bag phones that went in your car and you could plug it into the
Yeah.
lighter of the car. Yeah, I'm old.
Hey now, okay, I remember my Motorola StarTech and how cool that was to have a flip phone.
The beeper, when you had the little pager, there was like, the school pages you, oh no. I remember deer season, I was in the woods, in my stand, and my pager went off. And I looked at it, was the school. Megan was in kindergarten. I was like, oh no. So we didn't have cell phones then. So I had to get out of the stand, go all the way back up to the house, because I was about, I don't know, maybe 1,000 yards from the house, go all the way back to the house, call the school, find out what was wrong. She caught her finger in the chain of the swing set, and they had to cut out the chain with this rescue squad came and had cut the chain on the thing. And so I had to go and pick her up. So I'm driving, so I get, so I take off the coveralls, but I was like, drove down to school, and as I was going by my husband's stand, I was like, beep, 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 just so when he got home that night, he was like, did you hear that jerk beeping there? It was me. Yeah. The days of the beeper.
Yep.
So. Oh my goodness.
Find the nearest payphone so you could hope you
Yeah.
had some change in your pocket to pump in
You
there.
always had change in your pocket or in the car. Always had change. Just
See, that-
because of that.
That's one thing I miss. I miss cash. I miss having cash. That is one thing I do miss. I don't miss the pagers or the flip phones, but I do miss cash.
Oh my goodness. And yes, Shelby, you're all set whenever you want to share screen. We're good that way.
Okay,
We're all set.
perfect.
Yeah.
So
like
just go
last
to
time.
the bottom, share screen, all good?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
awesome.
What's the order tonight, Owen? By that I didn't get.
Oh, the order tonight. Okay, so
Yes.
the order is you first,
Oh, okay.
doing the overview of state law.
Okay.
Matt's going to do what it's like to be a farmer and the pressures of being a farmer. Then we are going to have Bob talk about realty and the effect and changes on agricultural land and the pressures on agricultural land from other development. And then Shelby will close us all up with local options for resolutions.
Excellent. Hi, Brian. Hi, Becky.
Hello,
How are you?
good. Sorry, it took me a
Good.
minute to unmute.
Hi, everybody.
Okay. Hi there. How are you?
Good. Good.
Good. Very good. So this time I won't say smarter, but working better, I think. I printed out my presentation in case I can't see it on the screen.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So you'll have time if you need to print it out, Shelby. You can print yours out.
Can't hurt.
Yeah, I know. And then what you do, Shelby, is you put it up on top and cover the screen. but it doesn't
Right,
co- but it doesn't co-
yes.
So it doesn't look like you're reading it. You're not looking down all the time. So you got right up on the screen.
So if I have dual screens, I should be okay though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would think.
Okay.
I think you'd be fine anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't exactly know where to look, but
I think
I'll
last
figure it
time it was
out.
because I didn't want everybody to see all the notes that I had written.
hmm,
And I think that's why. So I think we should be okay tonight. I don't think I need that, but I learned, fool me once, it's okay. Not fool me twice, no. So we do have 23 signed up for tonight, but who knows who's going to actually show. And so last time when we did this, there weren't very many people on the call itself, but we just pretended like there were. And so that was a recording because it is recorded. And we want to make sure that, people can view it later on because a lot of those people just want to get the link so they can view it at their leisure.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Don't beat this girl.
It's recording, so you can watch it back.
So do you want to give it a couple minutes, Jen, before we start?
Yeah, it's just now 7. Let's give people a little bit of time.
Okay.
And then that's what we did last time. So it's 7:01, give it to like 7:03, and then we can just go ahead and get started. I think that's probably about right. At least according to my computer, it says 7:01.
This is
Yep.
the part I think that makes the virtual things like this the most challenging. You don't get to kind of have the feel to
Interact.
the room and how people are reacting to what you're
Mhm.
saying and the
Yes.
faces and the kind of body, and that makes this the most challenging, I think.
Well, and Shelby's really good about asking questions. And we did actually have somebody from the public on the last call, on the last forum. And so that really helped because they were very quiet. And then all of a sudden, they did have a question. And so there's some interaction going on, which was great. So that was really, really good. But I also think this is a bad time of year. I think people would rather be outside if they can, instead of sitting in front of a Zoom. I know, Matt, you're outside all the time, obviously, but
Not tonight, they don't.
I know, I
No.
totally agree with you, just not today. It's
Yeah.
so hot.
I know. Yeah, today was too hot.
And tomorrow's gonna be even hotter.
Yes.
As soon as I hit
Hey,
the air
Steph.
conditioning
Stephanie.
tonight, it's,
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
hi.
So.
Hi, Matt. Anybody hit the big thunderstorms going home tonight?
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes of torrential downpour. About I don't know, 4:45.
Yep, that's probably about the time I was going past the
4:50.
hotel exit.
We had about 15 minutes of nice rain, lots of thunder, but no lightning and no wind. So it was pretty nice.
Yeah, not a lot of wind, but definitely thunder, lightning, and a lot of rain very quickly.
Well, and it did drop the temperature by 10 degrees.
Yeah.
That was pretty nice.
I was trying
Too
to get
late.
ready to leave the office, and all of a sudden I started to hear the rumblings, and I just gave up because I decided this morning I didn't need to take my umbrella with me because I didn't need it. So sat at home.
dear.
So I knew that downpour had my name on it. But you can thank me for the rain.
Thank you.
Got it. Katie, why don't you just shift that a little bit so he's, and there you go. That's marvelous. There we go. So,
It's a filter. It's a filter.
You're at the office, Jen?
yes, I'm here with Bob and with Zoe. Katie, I know her as Katie.
Is Pat still, Pat still there?
No.
No.
And baby Otto, who's sound asleep.
Oh,
Yes. So we're good. All right. So I'm going to mute everybody else and let Owen, he's going to take over and get this show on the road.
Okay.
Okay.
So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Agricultural Land Use Under Pressure. This is the fourth of our 5-part virtual series in 2021 regarding farming in Dutchess. We're focusing on forwarding information about agricultural topics and trends in our county and our community. So agriculture has changed a lot over time and continues to be one of Dutchess County's primary industries, playing a significant role in the economy and quality of life for Dutchess County residents. Municipal land use and planning decisions may impact existing agricultural operations and continued farm viability. However, many farms are expanding on-site activities that may raise concerns for communities, and the real estate market is changing, causing new pressures on farmers. The number of farms has grown in Dutchess County from 568 in 1974 to 620 in 2017. According to the last 8-year review of agricultural districts completed in 2016, the number of acres in agricultural districts grew from 164,380 to 196,164, a 19% growth over the previous 8 years. All 4 districts in the county showed a significant growth and increase in acreage, comprising 38% of Dutchess County's total land base. The value in the last 15 years of agricultural products has increased 58%, and more than 40% of our farmland in the county is not owned by farmers, but is actually leased, making it possible to sustain our strong agricultural foundation. So in tonight's session, you're going to hear from 4 speakers who will address state agricultural law and what being a right to farm to state means. Jennifer Fimbel will give an overview of New York State agricultural laws and what it means to be a right to farm state. Matt Sabellico will discuss pressures as seen from a farmer. Ferris will discuss how the real estate market has changed over time and how that impacts agricultural land and the land next to it. And finally, Shelby Frangk will discuss some resources for how to resolve conflicts. We hope that this session will lay the foundation for understanding agricultural districts and delve into the increasingly recurrent question of what activities local municipalities can and cannot regulate regarding farm operations within agricultural districts. The speakers will provide clarification on land use regulations that are still applicable, as well as those that may be in conflict with the New York State Ag and Markets Law. In addition, they will share real-world examples showcasing the interplay between agricultural districts law and local land use ordinances. So again, I welcome you to tonight's session. And on behalf of the Dutchess County Planning Department, thank you to all of our speakers for participating in tonight's event. And then with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jen to start with the overview of what it is the agricultural districts law are in New York State, what it is to be a New York State right to farm law state. Jen.
Thanks, Eoin. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Oh, come on. Well,
Slideshow. yeah.
there we go. I found it. There we go. There we are. All right. So this is the Farming in Dutchess virtual series, agricultural land and uses under pressure. So I've been tasked with explaining to you what agricultural districts are. Ag districts were enacted in 1971 to keep farmland and agricultural production. New York State has approximately 250 agricultural districts that represent 8.5 million acres of land. Ag districts are county adopted, state certified areas where commercial agriculture is encouraged and protected. A geographic area which consists predominantly of viable agricultural land. Agricultural operations within the district are the priority land use and afforded benefits and protections to promote the continuation of farming and the preservation of agricultural land. In practice, districts may include land that is actively farmed, idle, forested, as well as residential and commercial. This helps town planners craft local zoning to accommodate agricultural practices and activities, where to limit sewer and water, and identifies farming areas. So Dutchess County has 4 ag districts. You see that 20, 21, 22, and 23. There are nearly 200,000 acres of land in ag districts in Dutchess County. Not all that land is used for farming, but acts as buffer property. It is important to note that land in an agricultural district is not related to zoning. It is a voluntary application, and there is no financial benefit to enrolling in an ag district. The right to farm laws only protect those farmers or landowners enrolled in an ag district and receive ag value assessment. So the ag value assessment is a minimum of 7 acres in production, excluding the house, gross an average of $10,000 in agricultural sales for at least 2 years, unless they're on less than 7 acres, and they have to gross an average of $50,000. Ag value assessment is based on the underlying quality of the soils. Soils of statewide importance and prime agricultural soils will garner the most value. Being in a right to farm state, New York State right to farm law, it's an agriculture and markets law, section 308. I'm just going to touch on some of it. I'm not reading the entire law, but the Commissioner of Agriculture in New York State, in consultation with the State Advisory Council on Agriculture, issues opinions based upon any request from any person whether particular agricultural practices are sound. Sound agricultural practices refer to those practices necessary for on-farm production, preparation, and marketing of agricultural commodities. A couple of examples: operation of farm equipment, proper use of agricultural chemicals and other crop production methods, protection, that's supposed to be production methods, direct sale to consumers of agricultural commodities or foods containing agricultural commodities produced on farm, agricultural tourism, use of farm structures. Those are just a couple of examples. The examples keep growing as time goes on. Upon the issuance of an opinion pursuant to this section, the commissioner shall publish a notice in a newspaper having a general circulation in the area, and a notice shall be given writing to the owner of the property on which the practice is conducted and any adjoining property owners. The opinion of the commissioner shall be final. So when there are complaints, there is a way and method of how these complaints are handled. When New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets reviews a local measure, an ordinance or an enforcement action, a denial of a variance or site plan approval, the department looks at the following. Is the affected farm located within an agricultural district? Not just any property, it has to be a farm. Does the regulated activity encompass farm operations? Is the local law or ordinance reasonable for farming? Is the public health or safety threatened by the regulated activity? So generally, farmers should exhaust their local administrative remedies such as zoning and other approvals before New York State Department of Ag and Markets review the local law. But they will evaluate the reasonableness of the specific requirement or complaint and process, as well as the substantive requirements imposed on the farm operation. New York State Department of Ag and Markets can be consulted while laws are being developed in a town so that towns won't run into problems later on. Complaints about local regulation are generated from affected landowners or farmers. The commissioner, in consultation with the State Advisory Council of Agriculture, will issue an opinion within 30 days. Such land use decisions shall be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So what works for one in one town may not be the same decision in another town. In Dutchess County, we have our own right to farm law, which balances out with the state right to farm law. Announced as the 2019 initiative at the 2018 Dutchess County Ag Advisory Committee Forum, the Dutchess County Right to Farm Law was passed unanimously by the county legislature and signed by County Executive Molinaro in August of 2019. This law works in complement with the New York State Right to Farm Law. This law also supports the farm-friendly regulation initiative included in the 2015 Dutchess County, Agriculture and Farmland Protection Plan. Some highlights of that Dutchess County Right to Farm Law: to preserve and maintain the ag character of the county, to protect our farms and agribusinesses, permit the continuation of agricultural practices, encourage the initiation and expansion of farms and agribusinesses, to promote new ways to resolve disputes concerning agricultural practices and farm operations. In order to maintain a vibrant farming economy in the county of Dutchess, it is necessary to limit the circumstances under which farming may be deemed to be a nuisance and to allow agricultural practices inherent to and necessary for the business of farming to proceed and be undertaken free of unreasonable and unwarranted interference or restriction. We also have a right to farm dispute resolution committee here in Dutchess County, which is relatively unique amongst the New York counties. We have not had to fully implement it at this time. It's been 2 years. We've come close. So the law establishes the Right to Farm Dispute Resolution Committee, which acts as a local arbitration mechanism for complaints related to farming activities that cannot be settled solely by the involved parties. The committee, composed of the chair of the Ag and Farmland Protection Board and the commissioner of the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, or their designated representative, as well as a representative from the New York State Agricultural Mediation Program, will meet to discuss the facts surrounding the dispute, encouraging all involved parties to partake in the discussions. The intent of the committee is to resolve disputes prior to, or if desired, alternatively to involving the New York State Department of Ag and Markets, which ends up costing everybody money. So farmers do have to comply with local laws, contrary to popular belief. Local governments, when exercising their powers to enact and administer comprehensive plans and local laws, ordinances, rules, or regulations, shall exercise these powers in such manner as may realize the policy and goals set forth in the Ag and Markets Law, Article 25AA, which is the Ag District Law, and shall not unreasonably restrict or regulate farm operations within ag districts in contravention of the purposes of the article unless it can be shown that the public health or safety is threatened. And so what that means is that all farms must comply with local laws, meaning things like waterways, when it comes to building permits, those things, but there are some modifications to some of those laws for farmers. But if a farm is in an ag district, the regulated farm and its activities may be protected under the Ag and Markets Law. A farm may request an Ag and Markets Law review by the department. If a farm is not in a county adopted, state certified agricultural district, then the Ag and Markets Law 305 does not apply. So some examples: disturbance of some land, whether it's a roadway construction on the farm, clear cutting of forested land, runoff from construction, all those things really, they need to be regulated, and they need to be regulated appropriately. They do need building permits and to follow, and the buildings must go to code depending on what those buildings are for. So if there's housing, say in an indoor arena, and there's an apartment on top, that building, that part has to be approved by the New York State or Dutchess County Health Department that it's suitable for housing. But a three-sided shed still may need a building permit, but it's at an agricultural rate, not a commercial rate. And that's where some towns, it gets the waters get a little muddy there. If they have to do a waterway disturbance or interference, sometimes that's also a necessary permit that they have to find. So they really need to do their homework, and all health codes they have to abide by. So some take-home messages, and I thought I took these out. We cannot overlook the importance of our small farms. The impact of these small farms is tremendous. These farmers may not be making their entire living on these smaller farms or properties, but they shouldn't be excluded in the planning process. It's important for municipalities, town boards, town assessors, and town planners and neighbors to realize the importance of agricultural land within their community and the impacts their decisions make on local farms. And just for giggles, the cost of community services was done several years ago. And it's, although working in open space lands may generate less revenue than residential, commercial, or industrial property, they require less public infrastructure and fewer community services. So cost of community services studies from 25 states show that on average, the median cost per dollar of revenue raised to provide public services for commercial and industrial lands was 30 cents. For working in open space lands, it was 37 cents. And for residential lands, it was $1.16. So who's taking up that slack from residential properties? It's open space and industrial properties, commercial, and farms. So the resources that I got all my information from today, and I'm going to leave it open if there's any questions. I think I covered everything you wanted, Owen.
You did. Thank you very much. The
You're
only
very
thing,
welcome.
I guess, is there any questions from anyone that's participating in tonight's event? You can either use the chat function or you can unmute yourself. Okay. Hearing none, we're going to turn it over to Matt Sabellico, who happens to be the chair of our Agricultural Advisory Committee and is also a local farmer in the town of East Fishkill with Sabellico Greenhouses. So Matt, the floor, well, the virtual floor, I guess we'll call it, is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, and so interestingly, as Jen was going through her section, it really brought me back to something that, before I became the chairman of our Agriculture Advisory Committee, I certainly was not as versed in agricultural law or the benefits that there are to being an ag district or any of that. And we had a big project that we had been working on, and because of our lack of knowledge and also the town's lack of knowledge, it actually wound up costing us and I'd like to think the town a great deal of revenue, and not to mention the time and things. So I'm very grateful to be part of this and to have been brought into this into the conversation. I've learned a lot. I'm very grateful for that. So just a little more introduction onto myself and my business, because that's one thing I think a lot of people forget, that farms are also businesses. We work the land and we grow plants or take care of livestock, but we're still businesses and we need to make a livelihood. I consider us a small farm. We're about 25 acres. My grandfather bought our first little piece of property when he came back from World War II, 1945. And since, I would like to think by being a good neighbor, most of the lots that have come up for sale around us, the neighbors have offered to us first. So now we went from about 1.5 acres to 25, and we're completely out of land. There's no more land to be had around us. And that is certainly one of the challenges I think that we face is we are in a residential, we're zoned residential, we're in R1 residential zoning. And we are completely surrounded by houses, and more houses are going up. And in one respect, it's great for business. It's great to see people coming in. The more houses, is kind of better for us. We do a lot of trees and shrubs and landscaping materials. It's primarily what we grow. But at the same time, there's some challenges to being surrounded by houses and wanting to be a good neighbor. You know, that is always our primary focus, is being a good neighbor. You know, if somebody comes to us and says they have an issue, we want to work it out and, you know, do what's best for the community and us and come up with a resolution. We don't want to fight with anybody. You know, we've been where we are for a long time. And I think we have good relationships with our neighbors because we've always treated it that way. We're fortunate to be where we are and have the customer base we do. And, you know, we certainly don't want to be run out of town because of, you know, things that we're doing on the farm. One of the things we've done is we've almost eliminated all spraying on our farm. We've gone almost completely organic. We rarely spray. We rarely use anything that could be of, you know, contaminate, could drift, could get into waterways. We try to be very mindful of that. You know, we try to operate from 8 to 5 because we are a business, and, you know, we're open to the public. We have a very high traffic agribusiness. You know, in May alone, we have over 30,000 people come to the farm. So we get a lot of traffic, a lot of people. We had a neighbor actually at one point, they were very upset because they couldn't use their pool in June because they felt there were too many people in their backyard. So we put up some shrubs and, you know, some hedging and, you know, tried to make it a little better, but, you know, it is our business. And our nursery sales yard is right on the other side of their backyard. So, you know, we tried to remedy it as best we could. Some other things happen. We don't need to get into all the details, but, you know, so no matter what, it's like, we always try to be a good neighbor and operate with the community in mind. You know, like I said, we feel fortunate to be where we are and doing what we do, and have been able to gain the respect of our community, and we don't want to lose that. So we try to operate in a way that is good for us and good for the community. I think one thing that I keep thinking about with in regards to this is the rise of social media. That has certainly puts a lot of pressure on businesses and really anybody, because, you know, the public, you know, as a business, we try to use social media as sort of an advertising publicity platform. And from time to time, people do not agree with some of the things that happen. And, you know, they can be awfully loud online. And, you know, sometimes I think often things get taken out of context, and it's easy for things to kind of spiral online. And you certainly don't want something that someone says online to do any damage to your reputation within the community, when you're always trying to be a good neighbor and do what's best for everyone. we actually had an incident recently where this past year, a group of baby foxes decided to join us at the farm, and right in our busy season, there were customers everywhere, and these baby foxes just decided that they wanted to hang out with everyone. So we told everyone not to feed them, not to do anything, but recently, I guess they got mange or some sort of infection, and the community was kind of up in arms, and we had people calling, telling us we had to come pick up our foxes, and we had to treat them, and that we were mistreating the foxes and all these other things. And really we were just trying to take a couple pictures and share this kind of joyous moment with the community. And that's always the line that you have to balance, is trying to share this joy, this thing that you've created out with the land and with the community, and it being taken the wrong way. So I see social media as being a blessing and a curse sometimes for for us, and especially I think as our as more and more people move into this area who are not as familiar with agriculture and sort of how farming works, some of these clashes seem to be happening more often. And I never like seeing, it's not just us, I see it with other people on other farms and things that are happening, and it like I said, I would hate to see something that happened online be a detriment to somebody's operation.
So Matt, you've talked a lot about how you've taken the initiative to work with your neighbors. You've
Yep.
talked to them. You try to reach out and stem any issue before it becomes an issue. And you've talked about how you worked with the town, particular to an improvement that you wanted to do to the farm.
Mhm.
But have you noticed throughout time the relationship with the town changed? And do you have that same relationship, and do they have that same relationship with you, that they now kind of come and talk to you about concerns or issues as a neighbor? Or do you see it more kind of in a kind of more bureaucratic way? Is that handled? And how has that changed over time?
I think, especially when we were in front of the planning board and we were kind of going through that process, we learned a lot from each other. I think, that was mutually beneficial instance where we both learned something. So really, since, I have had town officials reach out, and I've also offered, any guidance that I could give, or help that I could give. But for the most part, it does seem kind of one-sided. I offer guidance, I offer help, and often not much happens.
And I don't want to steal Shelby's thunder, but Shelby later on, our fourth speaker, is going to talk about some of the work that
Yep.
she did in kind of the audit and the review, and some of the practices. So we'll let Shelby go into that. But is there anything else, Matt, you wanted to speak on before we moved on to Bob?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it's certainly, I have been at our farm now for about 20 years. I've been back at the farm, went off to college, and it is a much different environment locally than it was, say, 20 years ago when I first came back and was kind of getting back into it. A lot has changed. A lot has really changed. We have, and as a farm that deals with a lot of smaller items, security has become an issue. We used to put a chain across the driveway. We're closed. Anybody could, walk right over it, kind of go over it if they wanted to. We've had to put up partly for deer, but, also for immoral people, an 8-foot deer fence and gates and cameras and a lot of things, that I would say 20 years ago really wasn't an issue. Or maybe it was, and I just wasn't as aware as I am now. But it's the environment is changing, and I think it's important that we, as farmers, as agribusinesses, business owners, find ways to adapt and continue doing what we do, because there's such a value to agriculture and farming. Having it within your community, I really see it as infrastructure. It's if you have a healthy agricultural community, which I really believe we do here in Dutchess County, because the variety of agricultural businesses that we have here is astounding to me. Every time I find a new farm or learn about somebody doing something new or different, it's pretty amazing to me. The just how deep the industry really goes locally, and that's really exciting to me, because I really think that our success is all tied to each other. We're not a industry that wants to do better than everybody else. We all want to help each other. We all want to be successful, and with good viable land and a lot of hard work, I think we can all be very successful. And I feel very fortunate to be part of this community and continue being here.
And Shelby, I believe, had a question for you.
Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me okay?
We can.
So I just wanted to ask, what would your advice be to new farmers looking to make Dutchess County their farm's home?
Have a plan. have a good plan. I really think everything starts in the planning stage. That's one of the things that I'm sort of struggling with now. Is we started as a roadside stand, and I don't think anybody in our operation ever thought we would become what we have, gotten as big as we have, and had many visitors and customers as we do. There really was no plan. So I'm trying to create a plan within something that has already sort of morphed into a little larger than I can beat into submission, I suppose. But start with a good plan, start small, and everything worth doing takes hard work. You got to put the work in. You got to be ready to put in the extra hours and sweat a little more, be outside on the heat advisory days, doing what you got to do. And I think it really does, but it really starts with a good plan. And we're very fortunate here in Dutchess County to have such an amazing group of people who are willing to help, willing to share their knowledge. And this is a perfect example. Our Ag Navigator is an incredible resource. I've sent many people her way. So start with a good plan, ask questions, get to know your farm neighbors, and I think a lot of the success lies there with the community.
Great. Thanks very much, Matt. So Matt, you said something that was a great segue to hand it over to Bob Ferris. Bob is a real estate professional and also a farmer in our community. And Matt talked about how much he perceived the community and agriculture has changed in the last 20 years. So Bob, could you kind of talk and give us your perspective on how Dutchess County has changed and what that impact has been on agriculture in Dutchess County, and kind of what the impacts of changes both from a residential, the development of residential farms, of the housing market growing up in the county, and what future impacts may be when you have that kind of development next to agricultural land.
Okay, I'm Bob Ferris, and by way of introduction, I was born on a family farm in Dutchess County a long time ago, 1940. And so I've been involved and understand farming from the standpoint of growing up as a farmer, and being lucky enough to buy a farm after the family farm had been sold. And I'm currently still farming in Dutchess County in the town of Beekman on a 60-acre farm, plus additional land that I rent. And I've also been a real estate broker with my own office since 1966 in the town of LaGrange. And we've always specialized in farms and country homes. That's always been my specialty. And so from the start, we have been involved in the selling of farms and farm properties and agricultural and country properties. And over the years, I figured up one time we've sold over 20,000 acres, an area larger than the town of Beekman, over time, over the 50 plus years that I've been in agriculture. And I've watched first I would say I've watched the real estate market change. When I first started in real estate, a lot of the activity centered around IBM. IBM was still expanding in the area. IBM was coming in. IBM was affecting farms, particularly in the town of Poughkeepsie, the town of Wappingers, somewhat in the town of LaGrange. And over time, Hagen Farms in Spack-and-Kill was turned into a housing development. Most of the farms in Wappingers were turned into housing developments, primarily for the IBM community that was growing until sometime in the 80s when IBM started downsizing in Dutchess County. At the same time, that IBM was the primary employer here in Dutchess County. We saw people coming up from New York, and people were coming starting in the 40s after World War II, buying little parcels of land and putting their cottages on them. And they were smaller homes and things that sometimes led to the towns having zoning laws that weren't in place at the time. And over time, small homes and cottages and weekend homes were somewhat zoned out. But that was part of it at that time. And there were developers who were buying farmland and breaking them into parcels. The Gold Brothers were two of those. And there's several Gold and Brothers roads in Dutchess County. And they were all land developments that the Gold Brothers did. And they would buy farmland, create lots, and then sell it, a lot of times carrying the financing on the lot so somebody could buy it with small down payments, $250, $500 in those days, and then pay it off over a period of 5 or 7 years. And that took a lot of farmland, a lot of good land out of agriculture, actually, in those times, in the 50s and the 60s primarily. And it was still developments like that going on up until the 90s, when it became more difficult to for people to develop land that got more expensive and things. And we don't see currently, even with COVID, and COVID has brought a huge demand on the housing department, on the housing market. But so far, it has had a huge impact on developing. I think primarily, as I think about it, because it's so expensive for somebody to buy a 200-acre farm and put it into housing lots. And by the time they're done, there's several $1 million and 2 to 3 to 4 to even sometimes 5 years in the planning process. That's probably going to change because there's so much demand for housing that ultimately there will be more development going on. And we are seeing signs, I'm seeing signs of investors and builders starting to ask questions, starting to think about it, but not actually doing it yet. But as the pressure continues to build, there will be people that will be putting pressure on agricultural land. And I have a saying that good land is good land for many uses. If it's good farmland, it's also good for development. And it drains well, and it has the same aspects that you need for agriculture as for builders. And that's a bit of a problem, frankly, for agricultural land because people are attracted to it. Woodlands and the lands that are currently available, there's more woodland available than there is open farmland, is easier to, it's not as easy to work with, and it's expensive, and it's a lot of it is rocks and hard pan and things that aren't conducive to land development. But at any rate, I think that it will be coming. And I would say this about farming now. I've seen farming change. Farming and the lack of loss of farms in Dutchess County has not only been because we are close to New York City and we've attracted industry when we had IBM, state institutions also were here, state prisons and things which required a lot of help and people needing housing, but also farming has always been an economic challenge. When I grew up on a small family farm, 20 cow dairies were part of what we had here. And then it was 30 cow dairies, and then it was 40 cow dairies. And then you couldn't really make a living on it unless you were a 70 or 80 cow dairy. And now if you don't milk 200 head of cattle, you really are challenged to make a living. There has been some exceptions to that, particularly the farms that joined together in a cooperative called Hudson Valley Fresh that have very high standards for their milk and their products. And they have been a godsend, you might say, for some of the family farms. Secondly, farming in general, nationally and in Dutchess County is everywhere. The owners of farmers are like me; they're old, and as the farms change from one generation to another, many of the kids who grew up on farms are making more money and have made their way in other professions, and they're not interested in taking over the family farm. One of the things that have saved agriculture in Dutchess County is the fact that we're close to the metropolitan area, and people from with considerable funds have bought a lot of the farms and farmland and kept it out of being developed, especially when you go from Unionville to Millbrook to Clinton Corners to Amenia to Northeast. Northeast used to have primarily farms. Now Northeast is becoming more shishi. It's still farms, but it's rich people up there owning the land, and the farms that are still existing there are benefiting from it because they farm the farmland and gain the people who own the successful people who own the land ag exemptions, making it possible for them to keep their farms. If you don't have an ag exemption, it's very expensive tax-wise to carry a parcel of land. You really need to, that's really one of the things that is keeping agriculture active in Dutchess County. It's a very important factor is the ag exemptions. And another part is that some of these people have donated their land for sold their development rights or donated their development rights for tax purposes. And that's the best way to keep farming farmland because it's there for perpetuity as agricultural land. And that's two of the ways, primary ways that we still have some beautiful landscapes and the things that attract tourism for one thing to Dutchess County, and tourism also brings on more people looking to remain here and to buy here. So that is part of what's going on in Dutchess County. I wrote down some things that I thought how to keep land in agriculture. One of them is conservation easements. If there's conservation easements on the land, obviously it's got to remain as agriculture. And I'd seen a young farmer just recently buy some land that had agricultural easements on it, and he's a very hardworking young man who is making his way in agriculture, which is not easy in these days because of the cost of equipment, the costs associated with repairs, taxes, all the different things. But he was able to buy this land, and with hard work, he's making it work. I mean, he's a very hard worker. You do not find people that are lazy involved in agriculture. It's just not in the cards. Secondly, tax exemptions help a great deal because people who own farmland, if they're not farming it themselves, the tax exemptions that another farmer like myself or anybody else, because I do it for a few people who are my neighbors, farm their land and gain them the tax exemption, which makes it possible to be able to continue holding on to the land. If you don't have an ag exemption on farmland, you can get up to where you're paying $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year pretty quickly in taxes. And no one is really interested in, even if they have the money, and paying those kinds of taxes on land. Third is I wrote down changing the use of the farm. For some farmers, they have become more agritourism. Martin Orchards comes to mind, for example, and many others. I've seen some young people, the Sioux Cups, having a sugar house and selling maple syrup and having events up there where they give hay rides and other factors. And other young people that are involved. There's another young farmer that I don't know personally who's involved in selling raw milk to the public. and taking the profit that you might say that would go to a middleman, and because he's dealing directly from the farm to the public. That's been an advantage, and that's some of the people who have those kind of innovations are continuing to farm and find ways to economically do it. Another thing would be that that would help in farming, frankly, is if there was a relaxation of regulations that some of these towns have, and making it easier for farmers, not only to do their farm, but there's a number of people, for example, landscapers and things, have no place to keep their equipment. And if farmers were allowed to rent some of their land to allow somebody to keep their, which just blends in with the farm, frankly, you don't even know it's there, to have it on their farms, let a landscaper keep his equipment there and work out of the farm. I know that there are several, over time, I've seen several contractors own farms, and they keep their agriculture or their construction equipment on the farm, and it's worked out pretty well, frankly. There's a farmer up in the Copac area that's doing that right now. And there's others here in Dutchess County that I think of. And another thing that would help keep farmers, which goes to town regulations and so forth, is if a farmer's in a financial problem or something, if they would let them sell say an acre land off a corner of the property, and go through a simplified process with the planning board instead of the process that they put a builder through, which makes it almost impossible for somebody just to go through and get a subdivision to sell, let's say 2 acres of land or something that would help the farmer and keep the remainder of the land in agriculture. That's another thing that I would recommend, frankly. And the other thing that I thought about, no one is really, I have never really seen it, but like they do with I can't think at the moment, like they do with carbon. They talk about selling your carbon rights. And somebody who is over on carbon, buying the carbon. Well, maybe there's developments in large developments in along Route 9 or in Hyde Park or something, and the farmer sells his development rights, if you want to call it that, or he has credit for, let's say, if he has so much land, 100 building units, he sells them to somebody that wants to enhance their project in a more metropolitan area in return and keep the farm. It's just another version, you might say, of having conservation easements.
That's very similar to Red Hook has a transfer of development rights where you can kind of take the credit of the development that you could do on the property and get the value of that and transfer it to somewhere else.
Right, exactly. I can think of a farm that's on the market right now, 400 plus acres, and it's a great piece of agricultural land. It's currently a horse farm. And there really is no other use for somebody to pay the kind of price that they're asking for, other than to develop it or with a major development, or put in a golf course maybe and develop around the golf course. Although I think that is probably not viable at the moment because golf isn't as popular as it used to be. That keeps it green, but it isn't as good as agriculture. It isn't as good as going by and seeing crops growing there or animals in the fields.
Do you
I
have
don't
any
think-
advice for adjacent farmers on how they could approach landowners to perhaps lease that property that they couldn't afford to buy, but they may want to be able to lease the property to actually expand their kind of footprint and their business by working with an adjacent landowner to use that property?
Well, I think that's happening very often because it's a win-win situation. It helps the farmer gain extra acreage that he is. This young farmer that I'm talking about bought 100 acres of land that had the ag exemption on it, but he also farms an additional maybe, I don't know, 200 acres thereabouts. That is other land that other people own that he is currently gaining them the agricultural exemption, and he is farming their land as well. And that is a major part of what's keeping agriculture in Dutchess County.
Especially
The
like
other
we
thing
talked
that
about
Ben talked about
with the conservation
is
easements in the
that, it's
northeast.
not all big farms. The towns should really be encouraging people to have, and instead of discouraging them if they don't have 5 acres, which a lot of the towns, or 10 acres, which a lot of the towns require to have an agricultural animal on them, they should relax that and let people with 2 acres or an acre or whatever have some chickens or something that can lead a young person into agriculture, for example. And if you go to the Dutchess County Fair, which will be starting pretty soon, you will see a lot of young people up there with their sheep and with their goats and with their pigs, and more of that. And that's a pretty big part of agriculture in Dutchess County, and more encouragement for that type of thing with relaxed zoning, I think would be helpful.
And that is a fantastic segue to our next speaker, Shelby, who actually has done a lot of work on assessing zoning and planning documentation, comprehensive plans. And she's going to speak to that in addition to some of the resolution potential. But just before we jump to you, Shelby, did anyone have any questions for Bob? So Bob, thank you. And we'll turn it over to you, Shelby.
I don't have a question for Bob, but I have a comment. I feel like you could easily do my presentation, so chime in if you have anything. Okay, so let me just try to share my screen here. Okay, so, here we go. So let's see here. Tell me what you can see. Can you see my screen? No.
Not yet.
Oh, hold on.
Now it's
Bear
coming.
with me. You can?
Now we can.
Okay. But you don't see it in slideshow. Or you do? Now you do.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. So as Eoin mentioned, I'm going to talk about some of the resolution methods and tools that are available to farmers and municipal officials and the public alike in Dutchess County. So the way I kind of thought about this presentation is, so I'm a planner. I should go back up a little bit. I'm a planner at the Dutchess County Planning Department. And part of being in local government, we have the ability to influence the public and influence our community in a number of different ways. And the first one being we can enact laws. So Jen spoke about that. We have a Dutchess County Right to Farm law, which implemented a Right to Farm Dispute Resolution Committee. Another way that we can communicate with the public is via education. So, sessions like this, and I worked for a long period of time, it was a labor of love on this countywide farm-friendly audit, which I'll speak a little bit more about, which resulted in a documentation called Blueprint. I'm not sure if you can see it, but so it was a publication that we did based on that audit and gave communities ways to further implement farm-friendly practices to, as Bob was speaking, to relax some of those regulations that farms may face. And the last one being we are resources. So we know resources like Jen Fimbel, our wonderful Dutchess County Ag Navigator, but we also, you know, have, we're also resources ourselves. So we developed this agricultural resources inventory application, which does not easily roll off the tongue. We called it ARIA. So let's see here. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the countywide farm-friendly audit. So this was initially part of the 2015 Dutchess County Agricultural and Farmland Protection Plan. It was one of the initiatives, farm-friendly regulations. So within the 2015 plan, there was an audit that was done. It surveyed 9 different communities. It looked at the communities' comprehensive plans and zoning codes to gauge their farm friendliness. So we decided that we wanted to do more. And so we underwent this countywide audit and looked at all of the communities' comprehensive plans and zoning codes. So it ended up being, as you can see there in bullet 2, 41 questions per community. So doing some quick math, that's 41 times 30, which equals 1,200, specifically 1,230 questions. Underscoring my comment of a labor of love. So we did 14 questions regarding comprehensive plans and then 27 questions regarding zoning codes. And the whole reason we were doing this was to better understand the relationship between municipal regulations and agriculture in Dutchess County. We also wanted to remove the barriers and enhance opportunities so that communities could be more farm friendly. I'll go into this a little bit more, but it was clear from comprehensive plans that communities do want agriculture. They do see it as a scenic vista. In some ways, they could improve a little bit and see it more as a business as well, speaking to Matt's point. But they do want farming. They do want farmers and they do want agriculture within their bounds. And sometimes the zoning code, in most cases, the zoning code precludes agriculture from really being able to exist and to its fullest potential. And so the last goal was to present communities with tools, real implementable tools that they can take back to their communities and present to them and say that these are things that we can do in order to create an environment where agriculture can thrive. So this is just the first page of the audit, gives you a sense of kind of what we were dealing with. So these are actually all of the questions on the comprehensive plan. Spread across the top there, you'll see all of the communities. And we answered the questions with yes, maybe, or no. So maybe was kind of an in-between category, but most of the time we answered yes or no. And so this is one of 3 pages. And again, this is on our website. So as I was mentioning, the main takeaway that we learned from the audit was most Dutchess County municipalities consider agriculture to be an important part of their community in the comprehensive plan. So actually 67% of communities feel that way, but often have regulatory barriers in their zoning codes that make supporting this industry challenging. So 67% support agriculture and 72% have regulatory barriers within their zoning codes. So obviously, with most things in life and in government, there's room for improvement. So what can we do? What can we as a local government, local county government, do to help? And as an aside, Dutchess County and in New York State is a home rule state. So at the county planning level, we offer advisory opinions and we are, offer educational tools. But really, the the zoning regulations happen at the local level. So we're in the position to affect great change by educating folks, and that's what we would try to do via this document, as I showed you before. So it's called Blueprint, an in-depth look at planning issues. This was the inaugural edition. If you know me, you know I like a pun. So it's titled Fielding Farm Friendliness Through Planning and Zoning. We've got a nice alpaca or llama, I'm not sure, featured on the front there, I think an alpaca. And so it's a llama, Jen says. Obviously, I have room for improvement as well. So it's a very comprehensive document if you look at me here. So it's, gosh, 14 pages long, many different explanatory tools. I'll go through a few of them. So the kind of 10,000 foot view is that we can strengthen farm friendliness in our local land use documents. In our comprehensive plans, we can include a specific section on agriculture that speaks to how agriculture is important to the community, not just as a scenic vista, not just as a beautiful overlook, but as a real business. As Matt said, and I wrote it down on a sticky note, agriculture is infrastructure. And that's an important distinction, and it's worthy of memorializing in the comprehensive plan. To add, even more weight to agriculture within the comprehensive plan, you can discuss and integrate agriculture data and maps, and that really gives it gives weight to agriculture and makes it so that if local governments change hands, the comprehensive plan can continue to view agriculture in the vein that the comprehensive plan review committee intended to. We would encourage you to reference the county agriculture and farmland protection plan. There's a lot of good information in there about protecting agriculture and continuing it for future use. And so referencing it within your comprehensive plan is a great complementary action, as well as discussing New York State agricultural districts and their benefits. Zoning codes are a little bit trickier, a little less straightforward, but we would suggest on a 10,000 foot level that communities consider farm-friendly regulations that are context sensitive. So that's the first one, and it's the first one probably because it's the most important one. Dutchess County is, as Bob was describing, a diverse county, and as Matt was describing, we've got the northeast portion of the county, which is largely farmland, and we've got the southwestern portion of the county, which is largely developed. So what's working in Beacon is not necessarily what's going to work in Amenia, and that's okay. That's how it should be. When a community looks at farm-friendly regulations, they should think about the context of their community and what they like for their present and for their future, and address the regulations as such. So that speaks to the second point, based on the priority of the community. We also suggest focusing on quote unquote right sizing the process to meet both the needs of the farmers and the needs of the community. So you want to keep in mind the cost to the farmer, both the cost and the time to the farmer, while also still maintaining public health, safety, and welfare, because obviously that's the goal of any local review process. And also be considerate of impacts on adjacent agricultural operations. And the last one being not a one-size-fits-all prescription. So these are tools within a toolkit. They are not necessarily all the tools that are possible. There are a few tools that we think could be helpful to communities within Dutchess County. And just because one works somewhere doesn't mean it's not going to work in another place. A mix of a variety of tools and a balance of all of these resources is probably what's going to be most helpful. So this is what we pulled out of our audit, and these are the tools within the toolkit that we hope communities will be able to reference and use going forward in order to be more farm friendly and implement farm friendly practices within their local land use documents. So I won't go through all of them. I'll just highlight some of the most important ones, and just a shout out to the blueprint document. There are local examples included within the document. So for example, let's see here, under tool 1, defining agricultural uses. Let's see here. The town of Milan has a great agricultural definition, and we include that within our blueprint document as a local example. And I think that's helpful to demonstrate that there are communities within Dutchess County that are really trying, and they're already doing a lot of things right. There's just always room for improvement. So let's see. We talked a lot about conservation easements. So that's tool number 4, utilizing agricultural lands preservations. So conservation easements are great. Programs, like purchase of development right programs and transfer of development right programs can be utilized even on the site plan level. You can have conservation subdivisions and clustering of homes so that you can still have development while maintaining that the area that for agriculture that's most valuable to the farm. In many instances, we recommend employing a modified site plan review. So that speaks to the right sizing that we were talking about to balance the needs of the farmer versus the needs of the public. In zoning codes, generally speaking, there are exceptions, but generally speaking, within zoning codes, if a use is not expressly allowed, it is generally prohibited. So if if a community doesn't necessarily speak to farm worker housing, that could indicate that farm worker housing is prohibited. So it's a balance, as all things are, but ensuring that the zoning code speaks to farm markets and roadside stands, various elements of agritourism and recreational activities, as well as farm worker housing and alternative energy uses specifically for agricultural purposes. Those are all very important to be included within a zoning code so they're not unnecessarily precluded by not being included. So let's see, I think that those are the main ones that I'd highlight. Let's see, tool number 5, regulating farms within the zoning code. That was one of the ones that we saw probably most often, and it was the hardest, I think the hardest to give recommendations for. And that is what Bob was speaking to. So in certain communities, they regulate for acreage and they regulate for the number of animals. And so that isn't something that we necessarily recommend or suggest doing. And so the blueprint document goes into a number of other suggestions that we recommend, and it really relies on being context sensitive and thinking about the farm and where it's located. So that's all I have on the countywide farm-friendly audit. Did anyone have questions about that? Blueprint document? Okay. So the last thing that I wanted to mention is the agricultural resources inventory application. So this speaks to the fact that we have a lot of great resources within Dutchess County, and that hopefully you'd consider the planning department as a resource as well. So this is actually an online searchable application on the Dutchess County Planning Department webpage. It is based on the Ag Plans Inventory of Resources Appendix. And so we took that sort of static document and made it a live searchable document on our website. It includes descriptions and contact information for almost 70 agricultural resources, with the goal of helping farmers, producers, municipal officials, and the public navigate these resources to further support Dutchess County agriculture. And so at the bottom there, you'll see this is a screenshot of the application on the website. So you can search by topic. There are topics such as advocacy, climate change, education, or you can filter by the name of the resource. So if you put in climate smart farming in the left here, it would pop up with the climate smart farming on the right-hand side. there's a little arrows to the right. These are expandable. There's a lot of other good information that's hidden within these arrows, and they're all printable. So this was our effort to kind of share resources and share information and make it so that agriculture can be just hopefully a little bit easier within Dutchess County. And we didn't get to the D's, but you'll see Dutchess County Agricultural Navigator is prominently listed there because Jen Fimbel is a great resource within Dutchess County. All right, I think that's all I have. These are the links to the documents that we were working on and the web pages that I mentioned. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Shelby. Now we had 2 questions. The first was from Matt Sabellico, and then I believe, Jen, you had a question. So Matt asked if any municipalities have made changes to their zoning codes since the audit has been released.
That's a great question. That's a great question. I am actually,
Well,
I'm not,
there
yeah,
are
go
a
ahead,
few.
Eoin.
So we've done some very specific review with the town of Clinton.
Yep.
About a couple of their proposed laws that we pointed them back to the audit and some guidance, which they did incorporate into the final changes. We've used the audit for reviews in the comprehensive plan in Northeast, Dover, Poughkeepsie, Millerton,
Pine Plains,
and I'm forgetting another. So we've been using it as a department consistently whenever we get specific communities referrals, which is the process by which they send their laws to us for review. Shelby is also now known as the resource that the communities go to, and it's been very good in the sense that they're reaching out to her in advance of something coming in. So they're asking for advice before they go and look at things. So there's been a couple examples where I think the audit has impacted the final product, Matt.
Good.
Yeah, and so that's a great point. I'm not necessarily sure if a community has read the blueprint document, or we also did a Dutchess County Planning Federation e-newsletter on this subject. I'm not sure if a community has read those documents or even come to our Planning Federation class that we did what feels like a long time ago. I guess it was a while ago now, and changed their land use documents based on those. But Eoin's right, looking forward, we have been able to influence some future policy and even some future site plans based on the recommendations that we give from those documents, which has been great. Like I said, it was a labor of love, and it's great to see when you can impact even just a very small change. Feels like a big thing.
Jen, you had a question?
No, I was giving applause to Shelby.
Oh,
All her hard
sorry.
work,
Thought there was a
yes.
raised hand. So
I asked another question.
absolutely.
No, I was just, Bob, especially your, when you were talking, kind of, do you or, Eoin or Shelby, anybody here, do you have any, I guess, guidance as to ways to find a balance between development and preservation of agriculture? Because Bob made a really good point, that good farmland also makes great development land. And, this is something that I've thought about a lot, is finding that balance. And, I certainly don't have the answer. But, I feel locally for me, where in East Fishkill, that a lot more emphasis goes toward the development than toward the preservation of agriculture locally. So I get, my question is really, does anybody have any advice, ideas as to ways to find that balance?
I'd like to say something. I think that it's agricultural land is underappreciated in the sense that it really contributes a lot to visitors coming to Dutchess County. They come here because they want to see the farms, they want to see open land, and the ambiance that we have here, which is primarily provided by farms,
Yep.
especially good, well-maintained farms. And I think it's underappreciated by the county and by the municipalities, how much it contributes to a good community in that respect. I think there could be a good argument for if a farmer isn't sending kids to school, for not charging them any school tax, because there's really is a low impact. Farming is a low impact on the tax system.
Yeah.
And the costs that are associated either in the town or in the school district. It keeps land out of, if it keeps land out of houses, it keeps land out of the cost of running schools.
And I think to
Another
add
thing
on
that
to,
I think about is that is a real potential ugliness, if you want to call it that, in our communities, is solar panels. Solar panels also need good agricultural land.
Yep.
And I have personally received maybe 50 inquiries from people that want to put solar panels on my farm.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing I want to see there. It would be worse than if I developed it and put in houses.
Mm.
They are really, I think, if they're out on the roads and where they can be sightly, they're ugly, and they're counterproductive to what I'm talking about. That agricultural land has a certain appeal, and it's and certainly solar panels have no appeal, in my opinion.
so I think continue on what Bob said, telling the story of agriculture and expanding it beyond the viewshed to how it is a business, how it absolutely contributes to the community is something that tourism does. And I think we've been trying through the 8-year plan and then all the work we've done with the advisory committee. But the local communities need to hear that story, I think, more, and have it emphasized at the town board level, at the town planning level, at the zoning board level, and in their comprehensive plans. If the communities make it a priority in the comprehensive plan, and then have the zoning and the laws reinforce that, it becomes just as important as any other development. And that's the best way to affect it. Chairman Pulver of the legislature is fond of saying he's the only remaining farmer on the legislature. It used to be in New York State that a farmer had to be on the planning board in each local community. I would gander a guess in Dutchess County that is probably not occurring on almost all planning boards at all 30 municipalities. So conveying the importance to all those levels of government that are making those decisions, I think, is a necessary repeating and retelling of that story, if not yearly, more frequently, to get it into mind. Because it used to be people knew all of the farmers in town and there were more of them. I think now more people coming in that aren't used to farming, which creates, to your point earlier, Matt, just the misunderstanding of what a farm does. And, you know, many other farmers cannot adhere to the 8-to-5 business model. You know, it happens all the time, year round. So conveying that and why it is important that this is a business that you're now next to, and explaining that importance, I think, is one way that we can balance how it is a development as part of the community as agriculture, not just what may typically be considered economic development by others.
I agree. I agree with everything you guys have said.
You just need to clone yourself essentially to be able to talk more outside of your normal working hours to do that in addition, right?
Exactly.
So did anyone have any other questions or comments? I know we have some attendees that weren't speakers. If any of you would like to add to the conversation, we would definitely welcome that. So if not, I'd like to again take this opportunity to thank all of our speakers this evening. You did a fantastic job, I think, explaining some of the pressures of the social land use kind of continuum with agriculture. A recording of tonight's session will be emailed to all registered attendees. That is a link. It will be available on the Dutchess County Planning Department's agricultural webpage. And if you are not aware, on Thursday, August 26th, the Dutchess County Agricultural Forum will be taking place at the Dutchess County Fair. It's 8 o'clock that morning. It's our 6th annual agricultural forum. We're returning after a year off for a pandemic. You might have heard of it. And we're going to be talking about some of the lessons learned from this agricultural series and a kind of wrap up of other agricultural issues and talking about what we're going to continue our work on next year. So with that, again, thank you for attending this. And we do have one more session coming up. The date is to be scheduled, correct, Shelby?
Yes.
But that will be talking about, and I just totally blanked on the subject.
Food security.
Food security, see? So thank you, Shelby. So food security will be our final session that will be coming up after the agricultural forum. So again, thank you everyone for attending and have a wonderful evening.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, we can go.
You did it. You did it.